All right, let's get right into it. Have you ever felt like you were just banging your head against a wall trying to learn something? That feeling of struggle. We usually think that's a sign we're failing. But what if I told you that feeling of difficulty, that friction, is actually the secret to making what you learn stick for good?
So, let me just ask you this straight up. Is learning supposed to feel easy? I mean, that's the common belief, isn't it? If we get something right away, with no effort, we think, hey, I'm a quick learner. We all kind of chase that feeling of easy fluency, thinking that's the ultimate goal.
Well, it turns out that's one of the biggest myths about how our brains work. That sense of struggle, it's not a red flag. It's actually a signal that your brain is putting in the hard work, the necessary work, for real, deep, long-lasting learning. So today, we're going to bust that myth wide open.
To really get this, we need to talk about a core strategy. It's all built around this idea called desirable difficulties. Now, I know what you're thinking. That sounds like a total contradiction, right? Desirable difficulties? But trust me, this is the very heart of how we build knowledge that actually lasts.
So what in the world are they? Well, this term comes from psychologists Elizabeth and Robert Bjork. And desirable difficulties are basically productive struggles. They're these little short-term hurdles you intentionally put in your own way. They absolutely make things harder in the moment, but the payoff is huge because they force your brain to work harder, to dig deeper, to encode and retrieve information.
And here are some real-world examples of what this looks like. So instead of cramming for hours, try spaced practice. You actually let yourself forget a little bit, so your brain has to work to recall the information. Or instead of mastering one thing at a time, try interleaving, mixing different subjects or skills together. And my favorite, before you even look at the solution, try to solve the problem yourself. Each one of these feels less efficient, I know, but what's really happening is you're building much stronger, more flexible pathways in your brain.
But, and this is a really important point, not all difficulty is created equal. A desirable difficulty is a challenge you can overcome. It stretches you, but it doesn't break you. An undesirable difficulty, on the other hand, is just a brick wall. It's like trying to do calculus when you don't even know basic algebra. That's not productive, it's just frustrating, and it completely shuts down learning. The whole game is about finding that sweet spot, that zone of productive struggle.
Okay, so having these strategies is great, but they're kind of useless if you don't have the right mindset to go with them. This is about more than just technique. It's about a fundamental shift in how you see yourself and the very nature of challenge. This is what really unlocks your potential.
And it really boils down to this simple but incredibly powerful idea. You just can't lean into difficulty if, deep down, you think your abilities are fixed, like they're carved in stone. What you believe about your own intelligence is the foundation for everything else.
In this table just lays it out so clearly. On one side, you have the fixed mindset. This is the belief that you're born with a certain amount of smarts and that's it. For someone with this view, having to put in effort feels like a weakness. It means you're not smart enough, so they avoid challenges. But then you have the growth mindset. This is the belief that your intelligence can be developed. People with this mindset see effort as the tool that makes you smarter. They run towards challenges and see failure not as some final judgment, but as a chance to learn something new. So we've got the strategy, we've got the mindset, but how does this all actually work on a biological level? Let's get into the science of it, because your brain is physically changing when you learn this way. It's pretty amazing. You've probably heard this famous saying before, neurons that fire together, wire together. It's catchy, right? But it's also the dead simple rule that governs how our brains build connections. Every single time you practice a skill or think a thought, you're lighting up a specific pathway of neurons. And this incredible ability is called neuroplasticity. The key thing to understand is that your brain is not fixed. It's not a static organ. It's constantly reorganizing itself based on what you do and what you experience. And that effortful, challenging learning we've been talking about, that is one of the most powerful drivers of this process. It means you are, quite literally, the architect of your own brain. So here's how it happens. When you tackle a tough task and you stick with it, even when you're making mistakes, you're forcing those sets of neurons to fire together over and over again. And every time they do, the connections between them, the synapses, get stronger. Think of it like trying to create a path in a dense forest. The first time is really hard, but the more you walk that same path, the clearer and easier it gets. That's exactly how a skill goes from being incredibly difficult to becoming second nature.
All right, let's pull all these threads together now. We've talked about the strategy of desirable difficulties, the importance of a growth mindset, and the science of neuroplasticity. So what's the takeaway? How do we actually use this to create learning that sticks?
Here's your game plan.
First, and maybe most importantly, reframe how you think. The next time something feels hard, tell yourself, okay, this is my brain getting stronger. Start to see mistakes not as failures, but just as data. Next, praise the effort and the strategy in yourself and in others, not just some vague idea of intelligence. Go looking for constructive feedback. And of course, start using those desirable difficulties. Space out your practice sessions and mix up the topics you're studying.
So I'll just leave you with this final question to think about. Now that you know that struggle is actually the engine of learning, that effort is what literally rewires your brain, and that your potential is not some fixed thing, what will you dare to struggle with next?